You never think your knee popping mid-squat is going to change your life. At most, I figured I'd need a brace, maybe some rest, definitely some Advil. But 3 weeks later, there I was, walking into a physical therapy office with a referral note, a mild limp, and absolutely no idea that my past was about to slap me in the face. Literally, well, figuratively. "Brandon Flores?" a voice called out from across the waiting room. I stood up, already feeling self-conscious in my gym shorts and worn sneakers. I turned toward the voice, ready to be led back to a cold exam room by someone named Rick or Stephanie. But instead, I was staring into the face of Jake Delaney. And not the Jake Delaney from LinkedIn with the buzz cut and real estate license. This was the Jake Delaney from 10th grade Algebra 2, from varsity soccer, from gym class where he used to walk around shirtless, way longer than necessary, and had this way of talking to teachers like he was doing them a favor by existing. Jake Delaney, who once teased me about the color of my shoelaces, and then offered me a ride home in the same breath. The guy who was just confusing enough to make me wonder, back when I was closeted and a little too good at bottling things up. "Jake?" I said before I could stop myself. He grinned. "Whoa! Brandon? No way." He looked older, obviously. His jaw sharper, arms way more defined, scrubs stretching slightly across his chest. But the grin was exactly the same, slightly crooked, effortlessly charming, a little dangerous. "I haven't seen you since." "Senior year," I said quickly. "Right, yeah. Damn. You look good, man." I laughed, awkwardly. "Thanks, you too. Didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same," he said, flipping the file in his hand. "So we're doing knee rehab today? Come on back." He turned, and I followed him down a hallway that suddenly felt way too long and narrow. The space smelled like eucalyptus and hand sanitizer. My heart thudded in my chest like I was 15 again. We stepped into a small room with a table, some bands and equipment, and a big window with frosted glass. "Hop up," he said, nodding toward the table. "We'll start with an assessment." I sat, feeling more exposed than I wanted to admit. Jake pulled up a rolling stool, flipping through my intake form. "So, you injured it during a deadlift?" he asked. "Squat, actually." "Were you going heavy?" "Not heavy enough to be impressive," I muttered. Jake chuckled and set the clipboard down. "Let's see what we're working with." He crouched beside me, gently resting one hand under my knee and the other just above it. His touch was warm, confident, familiar in a way that immediately set off alarms in my brain. Or maybe not alarms, maybe something closer to fireworks. He pressed gently, moving my leg through a small range of motion. "Any pain here?" he asked, eyes flicking up to mine. "A little," I said, my voice cracking slightly. His hand was still on my thigh. "You always had skinny legs," he murmured, almost to himself. I blinked. "What?" He looked up at me and smiled again. "Back in high school. You ran cross-country, right?" "Yeah." "Forgot you remembered that." "I remember a lot," he said, shifting a little closer. "It's my job now. I study bodies." I rolled my eyes, trying to play it cool, but my skin was burning under his touch. His fingers skimmed just a bit higher up my leg than necessary. "Still pretty lean," he added. "You're being weird," I said, half laughing. "Am I?" He tilted his head. "Sorry, I just didn't think I'd ever see you again. Especially not half undressed." I felt my ears go hot. "I'm wearing shorts." "Yeah, but still," he grinned. "It's a nice surprise." I swallowed, my pulse hammering now. Was this how he talked to all his patients? Probably not. Or maybe it was just me who felt this shift in the air. This undercurrent of something I didn't know how to name. We hadn't seen each other in nearly a decade, and yet it felt like we'd picked up mid-conversation, like the version of us that might have existed in some alternate timeline was hovering just beneath the surface. "Okay," he said, breaking the silence. Lie back. I want to check the alignment in your hips. I hesitated. Trust me, he added, his tone softening. I lay back, staring at the ceiling tiles, pretending not to notice the way he adjusted my leg again, or how his hand slid under my thigh with that same slow, confident pressure. If this was how the first appointment started, I had no idea how I was supposed to survive 8 weeks of this. But part of me wasn't sure I wanted to survive it at all. If there was one thing I hadn't expected when I walked into that clinic, it was how intimate physical therapy actually was. And not in some romanticized, oh, bodies are fascinating way, no. Real PT was basically, here, lie down while someone you used to see every day in high school silently questions every life choice you've made since turning 18. Take a deep breath, Jake said, still standing beside the table as I lay on my back. I did. Or tried. My chest felt tight, partly because of nerves. Partly because Jake had placed both his hands on my hips to check alignment. You're tense, he said. Gee, wonder why? He smirked. Relax, I'm just assessing. Assessing what? Whether I'd survive this session without embarrassing myself? Because if he slid his hands even 1 inch higher, I wasn't sure I would. He adjusted my legs, shifting one knee slightly inward. Your hips are uneven, probably from overcompensating for the injury. Okay, I said, staring fixedly at the ceiling to avoid acknowledging the fact that Jake Delaney, former high school soccer star and current owner of the most distracting forearms I'd ever seen, was standing between my legs. He pressed lightly into the muscles along my hip. Tell me if anything hurts. That depends, I said weakly. Are we talking physical pain or emotional pain from the flashbacks to gym class? That earned a laugh. A real one, the kind I remembered from school. Bright, teasing, a little reckless. God, you haven't changed at all, he said. Pretty sure I have, I muttered. He glanced at me. Not in the ways that matter. My heartbeat stuttered. What was that supposed to mean? Before I could ask, he guided my right leg upward, bending it at the knee. His hand slid behind my thigh, lifting just enough that I had to brace myself. My fingers curled into the sides of the table. You good? He asked. Define good. Jake shook his head, still smiling. You're fine. Just breathe. I tried to, but the warmth of his hand on my leg made it nearly impossible. He started guiding me through slow movements, supporting the weight of my leg like it was nothing. Every so often, his fingers brushed the inside of my thigh. Not inappropriate, not exactly. Just enough to make me lose every coherent thought. I remember you being flexible, he said suddenly. I choked. What? He looked up casually. You were always stretching before class. Thought maybe you were doing yoga or something. Yeah, well, turns out I peaked at 17. Doubt that, he said. Trust me, I do this for a living. I can tell when someone takes care of their body. There it was again. That tone. Soft. Intentional. Like there was a second meaning under the first. I didn't know what Jake was doing, but I knew one thing. He hadn't talked to me like this in high school. Back then, he'd been confusing. Friendly one moment, distant the next. Teasing in ways that almost felt like flirting, except guys like him didn't flirt with guys like me. At least that's what I used to tell myself. All right, he said after a moment, lowering my leg. Let's get you sitting up. When I pushed myself upright, he placed a hand on my lower back, steadying me. His fingers lingered just a second too long, warm, grounding, impossible to ignore. You've got decent mobility, he said, for someone who tried to squat like a baby giraffe. I'm never living that down, am I? Not a chance, he grinned. But I'll fix you. A shiver ran down my spine that had absolutely nothing to do with my knee. I'm going to show you some home exercises, Jake said, reaching for a resistance band. But I want to keep monitoring you pretty closely for the first couple weeks. How closely? I asked, trying, and failing, to keep it casual. He stepped in front of me, looping the band around my ankle. He was close enough that I could smell him. Clean laundry, eucalyptus lotion, and something warm and subtle that I remembered from sweaty high school hallways. Jake met my eyes. "Pretty close," he said. My throat went dry. "Right, for medical reasons." His mouth twitched. "Sure, medical." He straightened, brushing dust off his scrubs. "You know, I'm glad you came in." "Because I'm injured?" "No." His gaze softened. "Because it's good to see you." I froze. Completely. Then he cleared his throat, stepping back. "Anyway, your next appointment is in 3 days. Same time." "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. "I'll be here." "Good," he said, giving me one last quick look, like he was thinking something, but refusing to say it. I walked out of that clinic more confused than when I'd limped in, because my knee hurt, but the rest of me felt awake in a way it hadn't in years, and part of me wondered, hoped, that maybe Jake felt it too. I did not spend the next 3 days thinking about Jake. Nope, not at all. I absolutely did not Google, "Why do physical therapists touch your hips so much?" Or "Do PTs flirt with patients?" Or "Is it normal to feel things during physical therapy at 2 a.m.? And I definitely didn't pace around my apartment 10 minutes before the next appointment, wondering whether the slightly fitted shirt I was wearing made me look like I was trying too hard. But when I walked back into the clinic and saw Jake leaning against the counter, flipping through a chart with his sleeves rolled up, biceps doing the absolute most, yeah, I felt something. He looked up the second I walked in, and there it was again. That face. That small, private smile he didn't give anyone else. "Brandon," he said, his voice dipping low in a way he probably didn't mean. "Right on time." "I try." "You always did," he said. "Come on, room 3. As I followed him down the hall, I couldn't help noticing that he slowed his pace slightly. Almost like he wanted me walking close beside him instead of trailing behind. We stepped into the room, and he closed the door with his foot, not in a weird way, just in a way that felt deliberate. "You warm up at all today?" he asked. "Walked from my car. Does that count?" He gave me a look. "You're lucky I'm nice." "Debatable." Jake shook his head, smiling to himself as he grabbed a stretch strap. "All right, up on the table." I climbed onto the table, and he stood in front of me, pulling one of my legs toward him to position it. "Let me know if you feel pain," he said, sliding one hand behind my calf and the other under my thigh. I nodded, trying not to react to the closeness. But then he lifted my leg slowly, smoothly, and I had no idea where to look. His hands were firm but careful, guiding the movement like he'd done it to me 100 times before. He pressed lightly against the inside of my knee. "Tight here?" My voice betrayed me. "Yeah." Jake's eyes flicked up for a second, just long enough to register something. "Recognition? Curiosity? Something else?" I couldn't tell. "Breathe," he murmured. I did. He applied a little more pressure, and my breath caught again, but not because of pain. It was the way he was looking at me now. Focused. Intent. A little too aware. He must have realized it, because he quickly glanced away, clearing his throat. "Your quads are pulling your knee alignment off. That's why it's been locking." "Got it," I said, my voice more strained than it should have been. Jake guided my leg down gently, but instead of stepping back, he stayed there, his hand still on my thigh like he forgot to let go. A second passed. 2. Then he blinked and pulled away, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sorry, habit. I get in the zone." "Yeah, it's fine," I said, even though every nerve in my body was buzzing. He grabbed an exercise ball from the corner. "We're going to try something new today. Lie back." I did as he asked. Jake stood beside me, holding my injured leg against the mat with one hand while positioning the ball between my knees with the other. "You're gonna squeeze the ball gently," he said, adjusting the angle of my hips with a touch that was way too familiar. "And I'm going to stabilize your knee." Then he placed one hand high on my inner thigh, right near where the ball rested, and the other just above my kneecap. I swallowed. Hard. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Sure," I managed, though it came out embarrassingly thin. "Good, squeeze." I obeyed. His fingers tightened just slightly. Not inappropriate. Not crossing any objective professional line. But still, too much. "Stronger," he murmured. I squeezed harder. "Good," he said. "Hold it." His voice had gone low, steady, warm, almost encouraging in a way that made my skin heat under his palms. "Looks like you've been keeping up with the home routine," he added. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe." He smiled. Small, proud. I can tell. And then I realized something. Jake wasn't nervous around me. Not even a little. If anything, I was the one flustered, while he seemed comfortable. Almost like he wanted to be this close. Like he chose to be. "All right," he said, finally releasing the pressure and stepping back. "You're doing really well." "Thanks." He leaned one shoulder against the wall, arms crossed over his chest, looking at me in a way that made my stomach twist. "Actually," he said slowly, "can I ask you something? And you can totally tell me no if it's weird." My pulse jumped. "Okay." He shifted a little, his eyes dropping to the floor, then lifting again. "Did you ever think about us? Back in school?" My brain shut down. All I could do was stare. Jake waited, jaw tight, like he was bracing for impact. "Because I did," he added quietly, "a lot more than I should have." The room suddenly felt way too small, way too warm, and his eyes, now locked on mine, told me he hadn't said it by accident. For a long second, I honestly thought I misheard him. Maybe my brain filled in something I wanted him to say, something I'd imagined 100 times back in high school, but never dared to believe was real. But Jake didn't look confused, or joking, or anything close to, "Oops, wrong words." He looked terrified, like he'd pulled a pin and now he was waiting to see if the grenade would blow up in his own hands. I felt my heartbeat in places I didn't even know had pulses. "You," I swallowed hard. "You thought about us?" He let out a sharp breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah. I know it sounds crazy." "Does it?" Jake's eyes flicked up to mine, searching, like he needed permission to keep going. "I don't know," he said quietly. Back then, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't even understand what I was feeling. Every time I talked to you, I felt off balance. Like I wanted something that didn't make any sense for the version of myself I was trying to be." I blinked. "Jake, what are you saying?" "That I liked you," he said finally. "I still do. And seeing you walk in that door for your first appointment, it messed me up. In a way I didn't expect." He dragged in a breath, pressing his lips together like he was restraining himself from saying too much. "I should have kept it professional," he said. "I know I'm supposed to, but the second I saw you again, all that old shit came rushing back and I haven't stopped thinking about it since." My throat closed. Because hearing him say those words I never expected from someone like him, felt like someone was peeling back years of buried, stubborn feelings I worked hard to forget. "I don't want you to feel weird," Jake added quickly. "If you want someone else to handle your therapy, I can—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop." Jake went still. I sat up slowly, trying to find solid ground in a moment that had tilted everything sideways. "You really liked me?" I asked. Jake nodded once. No hesitation. "Back then? In high school?" A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You remember those stupid jokes I made? The teasing?" "Every single one," I muttered. "Yeah," he said softly. "They weren't really jokes. I was just an idiot who didn't know how to handle being attracted to someone when I didn't even know what that meant for me. I didn't know what to do with my hands, my heart, my entire body. I'd imagined hearing something like this from him when I was 17. Never now. Never like this. He shifted closer, but not too close. Just enough to show he wanted to be near me without assuming anything. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he said. I just had to say it. Because being around you again, touching you, even for work, it's messing with my head. My breath caught before I could help it. "And I know you felt something," he added quietly. "I'm not imagining that." God, he had to say it like that, didn't he? I exhaled shakily. "Jake," he waited. "I did feel something," I admitted, my voice barely steady. "You're not imagining it." His shoulders dropped in relief, real relief, and something warm flickered behind his eyes. But he didn't move closer, didn't push. He just watched me, waiting like he'd already braced for every possible answer. "But," I added, "this is confusing as hell. You're my physical therapist, and we haven't seen each other in years." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm telling you now, not later. Not when I'm touching your leg and trying to pretend I'm not thinking about the fact that it's you I'm touching." My face heated instantly. "Jake, it's the truth," he said simply, "and I don't want to hide it. Not again." The room felt too quiet, too intimate, like every sound, every breath was amplified by what he'd just said. Then Jake stepped back, not far, just enough to give me space. His voice steadied. "Look," he said, "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to start something while we're in this weird PT patient place. I just needed you to know." I nodded, trying to make sense of the storm going on inside me. "You deserve the truth," he added, "not the version of me who kept pretending he didn't give a damn." I stared at him. At the guy who once pretended not to notice me. At the guy who now couldn't seem to stop. At the guy who was risking a lot by saying this out loud. "Jake," I said softly, "I don't want to switch therapists." He blinked. "You don't?" "No." I shook my head. "I want to see where this goes." Something in his expression broke open. Relief, warmth, something dangerously close to hope. "Okay," he said, voice low, "but," I added, sliding off the table slowly, my knee aching but my pulse racing, "we're gonna have to figure out some boundaries." He gave a crooked half grin. "Yeah, probably good." "And you," I said, pointing at him, "need to stop doing that." "What?" "That thigh-grabbing thing. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Jake laughed. Quiet, breathless, almost disbelieving. "I can try. You better." He stepped closer. Just one step. Not touching, not crossing the line, but close enough that I could feel the warmth from him. "So," he said softly, "you're really okay with me being the one helping you recover?" I held his gaze. "I want it to be you." The room felt electric. Then Jake exhaled slowly, eyes softening in a way I had never seen in high school. Not once. "All right, Brandon," he murmured. "We'll take it slow." He paused. "But I'm not going to pretend I don't want you." A shiver shot straight through me. I had no idea where this was heading, but suddenly I couldn't wait for my next appointment. If anything, the confession made everything worse. Not in a bad way. Worse in the sense that now, every time Jake touched me, my brain short-circuited so hard I could barely remember my own name. And 3 days later, walking into the clinic for my next appointment, I felt like I was stepping into a minefield where every single step was booby-trapped, with the possibility of doing something stupid. Jake met my eyes the second I entered, and it was the look that did me in. Not flirty, not teasing, not shy, just aware, like he and I were holding on to the same secret now. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Hey." We stared for a half-second too long before he cleared his throat and straightened. "Room 3? Lead the way." This time, he didn't walk ahead. He waited for me, then matched my pace the entire short hallway. A small thing, but not a small thing. As soon as the door shut behind us, Jake leaned back against it and let out a breath. "Just want to be up front," he said. "I told my supervisor I'm taking a hands-off approach today." "Oh? Yeah, boundaries." I nodded. "That's good. Smart," he nodded back. "Professional." "Very." A beat passed. We both cracked at the same time. "I can't do a hands-off approach," he blurted. "Thank God, because neither can I exhaled. Jake ran a hand through his hair. "We're idiots. Massive idiots," I agreed. But we were smiling now. Helpless, reckless, relieved smiles that neither of us could hide. We tried. For about 3 minutes, we really tried. "Okay," he said, pulling himself together. "We'll start with step-ups. 0 physical contact. Totally safe." "Perfect." He stood in front of me as I placed my foot on the platform. "Just go slow," he said. "Core engaged. Shoulders back." I stepped up. Our eyes met. He immediately looked away, like staring at me too long was going to set something on fire. It wasn't a wrong assumption. "Good," he said. "Now again." I stepped. He watched. His jaw clenched in a way that absolutely did not feel professional. After a few reps, he rubbed the back of his neck. "And how's the knee feel?" "Fine." "Pain?" "No." "Tightness?" "Only in places that have nothing to do with my knee." He froze. I froze. The air between us thickened instantly. Warm, charged, impossible to ignore. Jake swallowed hard. "Brandon." "Sorry," I muttered. "That slipped out." "No," Jake said quietly, stepping closer. "It didn't." I felt my pulse spike. He stopped a foot away from me, 1 foot, as if that single 12-inch buffer was the only thing keeping him from doing something reckless. He looked down at the floor, then up at me again, eyes a little darker, a little too honest. "I'm trying," he said, voice low. "You have no idea how hard I'm trying." I swallowed. "Same." He exhaled shakily. "But I meant what I said last session. We go slow." "I know. I don't want to screw this up before it even starts." "I know. And I want to do right by you, as a patient." He paused. "And as whatever this is." My chest tightened. "Yeah, me too." He took another breath, steadying himself. "Okay. New plan. Hit me. No touching unless absolutely necessary." Define necessary. Jake shot me a look. "Brandon?" Okay. I laughed weakly. "Fine. Exercises only," he said. "I'll guide verbally, and only step in physically if your form is off enough to risk injury." "Good. Smart," I said, nodding. We lasted 45 seconds. 45. I was doing a hamstring slide on the table, lying on my back with my heel on a towel. Jake was standing beside me, hands clasped behind him like he was physically restraining himself. "You're rotating your hip outward," he said. "Oh. Try to keep it squared." "Trying." "No, you're still." "Okay, hang on," he muttered, finally giving in. He placed 2 fingers on the side of my hip. Barely anything, the lightest touch imaginable, but it sent a jolt straight through me. "Here," he murmured. "Keep this aligned." My breath hitched. Jake heard it. His hand froze. He didn't move it. Not at first. Just glanced up at me with an expression that made my lungs forget how to work. "Brandon," he said softly, "you can't make noises like that." I didn't make a noise. I lied immediately. "You did." "No, I didn't." Jake's eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up. "You did," he repeated. Silence swallowed the room whole. We stayed like that. His hand on my hip, his body too close, my heart beating way too loud, until he finally exhaled and stepped back. I can't be trusted, he muttered. Same, I said. He ran a hand over his face. Okay, let's just do something safer. An exercise where I can't accidentally grab you. Is there one? Jake thought for a moment. The bike. The stationary bike? Yes, perfect, zero risk. 5 minutes later, as I sat pedaling, Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to look casual but failing spectacularly. His eyes kept drifting to me, my legs, my chest, my face, before he forced himself to look away. Then, after a long silence, he said, "You know you're making this impossible." I slowed my pedaling. "I'm not doing anything. That's the problem," I scoffed. "You're the one who confessed first." "Yeah, and I regret that a little," Jake muttered. "Because now I know you feel something too, and I can't unknow it." My heart thudded. "What exactly do you know?" He stepped forward. "Just a little. Just enough. That if I touched you right now," he said quietly, "you wouldn't stop me." Something deep inside me tightened, low, heavy, undeniable. I swallowed. "You're right." Jake's jaw flexed. He dragged his gaze from my mouth up to my eyes, fighting something he was rapidly losing control over. "But I won't," he said. "Why not?" I whispered. "Because," he exhaled, "because when I touch you, I don't want it to be halfway." The room spun. He stepped back slowly, breathing hard. Session over. Boundary intact. Barely. "See you next time," he said, voice a low rumble. I nodded, legs shaking as I got off the bike. "Yeah, next time." Jake watched me walk to the door. Not with hunger, not with impatience. With restraint. The kind that only forms when someone wants you more than they're allowed to show. And that was the moment I realized, if he cracked, if even once he let himself stop holding back, I wasn't going to stand a chance. I barely slept the night after that session. Not because of pain, not because of the exercises, but because of the way Jake said it. "When I touch you, I don't want it to be halfway." That sentence haunted me. It practically vibrated in my skull. By the time my next appointment rolled around, I'd replayed it maybe 100 times, each version more unhinged than the last. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking, but the second I walked into the clinic and saw Jake leaning over the desk, face slightly flushed, hair a little messy like he'd been running his hands through it. Yeah, no, I wasn't imagining anything. He saw me and straightened so fast he almost knocked over a stack of folders. "Hey," he said, voice too casual to be natural. "Hey." We stared for a beat, long enough for the receptionist to look between us suspiciously, before deciding she didn't get paid enough to care. Jake jerked his chin toward the hallway. "Room 3. Just like always. Except today, he didn't walk beside me. He didn't match my pace. He walked ahead. Shoulders tense, posture stiff, like he was afraid being too close would set him off. He opened the door, gestured me inside, and shut it firmly behind us. As soon as the latch clicked, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since Monday. "All right," he muttered. "Ground rules?" I blinked. "Ground rules?" He nodded, pacing once across the room. "Yeah, I came up with some. To keep everything clean and professional." "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's hear them." He held up a finger. "Rule number 1, no flirting." I raised an eyebrow. "You flirted first." "That's not the point." "It feels relevant." He shot me a look. "Rule number 1, no flirting." I snorted. "Sure, next." He lifted a second finger. "Rule number 2, no comments about noises." "I didn't make a..." His eyes narrowed. "You made a noise." I grinned. "Whatever you say." "Rule number 3, he said louder, ignoring me. We maintain physical contact only when absolutely necessary." "Define necessary." Jake pinched the bridge of his nose. "Brandon, I swear to God." I held up my hands. "Okay, no flirting, no noises, no unnecessary touching. Got it." "Good," he said, nodding. "Perfect. Excellent." He rubbed his palms together. Let's get started. We lasted, this time, 6 minutes. He had me doing quad activations on the table. Simple movement, basic, foolproof. No sexual tension potential. Except the second my leg trembled from fatigue, he instinctively reached for my thigh to stabilize it. His hand landed. Warm, firm, familiar. We both froze. He stared at his hand like it belonged to someone else. I stared at him. He swallowed. "I didn't mean to do that," he said quietly. "I know." But he didn't move his hand. Not right away. When he finally pulled back, it was slow, reluctant, like his fingers didn't actually want to let go. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Okay, new plan." "That fast? The rules lasted longer than last time." "No talking," he muttered. "I need to think." He backed up until he hit the wall, leaning against it like he needed physical support to keep himself upright. "We can't keep doing this," he said. "Doing what?" He gave me a look that could have set the room on fire. "You know what?" I swallowed. "Jake, you're the one who keeps—" "I know," he snapped, then immediately softened. "Sorry, I can't think straight around you." That did not help my heartbeat situation. He dragged a hand through his hair again. Every session, I tell myself I'm gonna be cool, be professional, keep it together. And then you walk in and it's like, he cut himself off. I waited. Finally, he said, quieter, "You confuse me." "Confuse you how?" He lifted his eyes and pinned me with a stare. "You act like you don't know the effect you have on me." My breath lodged in my chest. I tried, then stopped. "Jake, I'm not trying to mess with you." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it worse." He pushed off the wall, taking a slow step toward me. Not close enough to touch, not close enough to cross a line, but close enough that the heat of his body brushed against the air around mine. "Do you want this?" he asked suddenly. My pulse stuttered. "What?" "This," he repeated. "Whatever this is between us. Do you want it? Or am I reading everything wrong and making an idiot of myself?" "You're not reading it wrong." He inhaled deeply, like he'd been waiting days to hear that. "But," I added, "you're right. We can't do anything while you're still treating me." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I don't want us to ruin each other's lives over a moment of whatever this is." Jake exhaled shakily. "I know. And we're adults. We can be patient." He nodded again. Silence stretched. Then he whispered, "I don't think I can wait 8 weeks." My stomach flipped. He stepped closer, not touching me, just standing in that charged, dangerous space where touching would have been too easy. His voice dropped to something warm and rough. "I want to kiss you so badly it's becoming a problem." My breath left my lungs in a shaky rush. "Jake, I won't," he said quickly. "I won't break the rules, I promise." His eyes flicked to my mouth anyway. "But if you asked me to," he murmured, "I don't think I could say no." Everything inside me tightened. Want. Need. Fear. Excitement. All of it tangled together until I wasn't sure which emotion belonged to which part of me. I took a slow breath, trying to steady myself. "Jake," I said softly, "finish the session." He blinked. "What?" "Do your job," I said. "Be professional. Complete the exercises, like nothing's going on." He stared at me, confused, frustrated, aching. "Why?" he whispered. I swallowed hard. "Because I need to know," I said quietly, "if you wanting me is a distraction." I paused, heart pounding. "Or if it's real." Jake didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then, eventually, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "Lie back on the table." His voice shook. "Just once." Then he steadied it. forcing himself into professional mode, into control, into the very thing he said he couldn't maintain. But as he placed one careful hand on my ankle, barely touching, gentle enough to be nothing more than guidance, I realized something. He wasn't just fighting desire. He was fighting for me. And I didn't know how much longer either of us could last. Jake's whole demeanor shifted, not in a dramatic way, not like he suddenly flipped a switch and became someone new. It was more like he forced himself behind an invisible line, a line he had been towing for weeks, and now he was clinging to it with white knuckles. His voice was steady. His hands were careful. His breathing, not so much. "All right," he said, guiding my ankle into place with 2 fingers, barely touching me. "We're switching to lateral activation work." "Okay," I murmured. "Lie on your side." I did. He knelt beside me. Not too close, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him at my back. He kept his hands off me, but I could sense how badly he wanted to place them, how hard he was fighting that instinct. "Lift your leg slowly," he said. "Keep your hips stacked." I raised it. My leg trembled, not from exertion. "Good," Jake said softly. "Now lower." His voice, it wasn't neutral like before. It wasn't cold. It was warm, steady, like he was trying to comfort both of us without saying so directly. I lifted again. He exhaled quietly, and my whole body felt that breath like a touch. "Jake?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah?" "This is different." He was silent for a beat. Then, "It's different because you admitted you feel something too." His honesty hit me harder than I expected. I lowered my leg, rolling onto my back to look at him. Jake froze. "You okay?" "I'm fine." I studied his face. "Are you?" He let out a breath that sounded like it shook something loose inside him. "No," he said. "Not even a little." He sat back on his heels, eyes locked on mine. There was no more pretending, no more distance, just the full truth of everything he had been holding back, pressing between us. "You have no idea what it's like," he murmured. "Trying to be professional with you. Touch your leg, your hip, your back, and pretend I don't." He cut himself off. "Don't what?" I asked, heart pounding. Jake's jaw tightened. "Don't want you." I felt that. Everywhere. But instead of closing the distance between us, I forced myself to say, "Then why don't you let yourself?" His eyes softened, pained, conflicted. "Because I don't want the first time I touch you like that to be on a treatment table, in a clinic, while you're injured, while I'm supposed to be helping you heal." I didn't expect that answer. He rubbed his palms on his thighs, grounding himself. "I know how that would look, how it would feel. I don't want you thinking I'm doing this because you're vulnerable, or because I see you as some teenage crush I never got over." "Jake!" "No," he said. "If I'm going to cross that line, it's not going to be here." My chest tightened. "I need it to mean something," he said, voice low. "And I need you standing on both legs when I finally let myself touch you the way I want to." I swallowed hard. "So you have a plan?" He smiled. Small, genuine, devastating. "No. But I'm trying really, really hard to make one, before I do something impulsive." I pushed myself up to sit. Our faces were close now, closer than they had been all session. Close enough that I could see how tight he held his jaw, how he kept glancing at my mouth without meaning to. "Jake," I said, "I don't want to wait 8 weeks." He groaned quietly. "Don't say stuff like that." "Why?" "Because I'm hanging on by a thread." I didn't move, neither did he. The air between us was thick, charged, too warm for such a small room. Then Jake did something he hadn't allowed himself to do since the beginning. He reached out. Slowly, tentatively, his hand hovered near my face, not touching, just close enough that heat radiated from it. "Can I?" he whispered. It wasn't a request for a kiss. It wasn't a request for something physical. It was simpler than that. He wanted permission to touch me at all. I nodded once. His fingertips brushed the side of my jaw, feather-light, barely a whisper of contact, but that single touch felt more intimate than anything we had done before. He drew in a sharp breath, his thumb tracing a slow, careful line along my cheek. "I've wanted to do this since I was 17, he murmured. My eyes fluttered shut. His fingers slid to the back of my neck, just enough to feel the shape of me without pulling me in. "And I still won't kiss you," he whispered, voice cracking just slightly. I opened my eyes. "Why not?" "Because I told you," he said, leaning forward until his forehead nearly touched mine. "When I do that, I want you whole, not limping through my clinic." My pulse was so loud it drowned out the hum of the air vent above us. Jake finally pulled his hand back, slow, reluctant, gentle. "That's enough for today," he said softly, standing like his legs were made of concrete. "But," I started. "Brandon," he gave me a look, one that promised more than words ever could. "One step at a time." I slid off the table, knee aching and heart completely destroyed in the best possible way. He walked me to the door, stopped, looked at me like he was memorizing something he wasn't allowed to touch again. "Next session," he said quietly, "we're moving to more advanced work." "What does that mean?" He swallowed. "That means," he murmured, "you're getting stronger, which means we're getting closer to the part where I don't have to hold back anymore." My breath caught. I nodded, and he let me leave, but not before I felt it. His restraint was running out, and when it snapped, neither of us was walking out unchanged. I swear I could feel the tension in the air before I even opened the clinic door for my next session. Maybe it was my nerves. Maybe it was anticipation. Maybe it was the fact that Jake had practically whispered, "When I don't have to hold back anymore," like it was a promise. Whatever it was, the second he saw me, really saw me, standing in the doorway, his expression changed. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. His shoulders lowered, his jaw tensed. His eyes lingered on me a little too long. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." He nodded toward the hallway. Room 3. We walked in silence. Side by side this time, not ahead or behind. Side by side felt worse somehow. More intimate. More real. When he closed the door behind us, he didn't speak right away. Just leaned against it for a moment, breathing like he had just finished a sprint. "You okay?" I asked. "No," he said immediately. "Not even close." He pushed off the door, trying to shake it off. "But I'm fine. We'll work. Keep things clean." "Uh-huh," I said, not believing him for 1 second. He grabbed a new set of bands, thicker, harder to pull, meant for the next stage of rehabilitation. "Stronger resistance today," he said. "Your form's good. You're progressing fast. Because you're a good therapist." He didn't answer. He just looked at me. Too long, too intently, too much for a tiny room with a closed door. "All right," he murmured, dropping his gaze. "Let's begin." We didn't last 10 minutes. I was doing step-downs off a low platform. Simple movement. Controlled. My knee handled it fine. But as I came down from a rep, I wobbled. A tiny bit. Nothing major. And Jake instinctively reached for my waist to steady me. Not my knee. Not my shoulder. My waist. Both hands. His fingers curled around my sides, warm, firm, grounding. And I froze. He froze. The room froze. His thumbs rested just barely under the hem of my shirt. Skin to skin. Lightning. We didn't breathe. We didn't move. We didn't speak. "Jake," I whispered. Slowly, so slowly, his head lifted. His eyes met mine, pupils blown, chest rising and falling too fast for the calm voice he always used. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For what?" "For this." His hands didn't leave my waist. I felt everything. His restraint, his hunger, his fear, his want, pressed into the space his fingers held. "We should stop," he said. "We should," I whispered back. He didn't move. Neither did I. His throat worked as he swallowed hard. "Brandon, if I don't let go right now, I'm not going to be able to." "Then don't let go." He inhaled sharply, quiet but sharp enough to cut the air between us. "Don't say that," he whispered. "Why not?" "Because I've been trying for weeks to convince myself you didn't mean any of this, that I'm imagining it, that I'm crossing lines. You're not imagining anything." His fingers tightened, reflexive, involuntary, like he couldn't help it. "Jake," I said, breath shaky, "if you want me to tell you to stop, I won't." His eyes fluttered shut. That was it. That was the moment something inside him snapped. He didn't pull me in, he didn't kiss me. He didn't do what every cell in his body was screaming for. Instead, he dragged both hands up my ribs, slow, deliberate, hungry, and then forced himself to step back like the floor between us had turned into fire. I nearly stumbled from the sudden loss of him. "God," he muttered, running both hands through his hair. "I can't do this. I can't." I swallowed. "Jake!" "No," he said, shaking his head. "I can't be your therapist anymore." My stomach dropped. "What?" He looked at me, really looked at me, and the conflict inside him was so raw, it almost hurt to see. "I can't treat you," he said. "Not like this. Not when every time I touch you I have to fight myself. Not when I'm thinking things I shouldn't think about someone on my table." "Jake, I'll talk to the front desk," he said softly. "They'll assign you to someone else, someone neutral, someone who won't." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Who won't want you?" He finished quietly. There it was. The truth. Still warm, still pulsing. I took a step forward. "Jake," he tensed. "If you're not my therapist anymore," I asked slowly, "what happens then?" He exhaled shakily, longer than necessary, like he'd been holding that question inside his lungs for weeks. Then he stepped closer, one step, another, until we were a breath apart. His voice was barely a whisper. "Then I kiss you." The room tilted. "And after that," he murmured, eyes dropping to my mouth, "I stop pretending I don't think about you every night." My pulse hammered in my throat. "So let them reassign me," I said. He swallowed hard. Yeah. His hand lifted, hesitant, shaking, and he cupped the side of my jaw like it was something fragile. "Then come back tomorrow," he murmured. "Tell them you want a new therapist." "And you?" I whispered. "I'll be outside," he said, waiting. There was no kiss. No crossing the final line, just a promise lit between our mouths. He let his hand fall away. "Go," he whispered, "before I break my own rule." I left the room on trembling legs. And I didn't look back, because I didn't have to. Tomorrow wasn't a question anymore. Tomorrow was already decided.